The Hunger Games is one of the most successful film franchises of the 2010s. And yet, despite having a massive impact on pop culture, there did not seem to be much discussion surrounding the series after it ended. Only recently, thanks to the new prequel film, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and the influx of Josh Hutcherson whistle memes, has The Hunger Games experienced a renaissance, with many revisiting the original films. I feel like many people have forgotten just how massive the Hunger Games hype train was at its peak. It popularized the YA dystopian genre that dominated the 2010s. It played a huge role in building online fandom culture. It's had a surprisingly big impact in the gaming sphere. At the height of its popularity, just about everyone was trying to get them a piece of the Hunger Games hype, with a number of the main cast hosting episodes of SNL, and a slew of movies coming out to parody the concept. I tried to watch one of these movies for the purposes of this video, but it was so bad with dated references like Fruit Ninja and Double Rainbow that I questioned why I even bothered to watch it in the first place. But the point stands that the Hunger Games' popularity was off the charts, and I think the biggest sign of the influence it has had is how its core themes and messaging have remained relevant to the real world. With its iconic three-finger salute, used throughout the series as a call for unity and resistance, having since made its way into real-world protests and social causes. Achieving this level of transcendence is an impressive feat for any work of fiction. A lot of the series' initial popularity is owed to its concept. Sending 2 children from each of the country's 12 districts in a televised fight to the death where only one will survive. The author of the series, Suzanne Collins, said in an interview that she got the idea for the Hunger Games while channel surfing.
I was flipping through images of reality television where there were these young people competing for $1 million or a bachelor or whatever. And then I was flipping and I was seeing footage from the Iraq War. And these 2 things began to sort of fuse together in a very unsettling way.
Merging the horrors of war with the theatricality of reality TV created an engaging and disturbing concept that made it tough to look away both in and out of the universe of the story. Growing up a fan of shows like Survivor and Big Brother, it's hard not to see the similarities between these reality competition shows and the Hunger Games. In an article written by former Survivor player Stephen Fishback talks about how the Hunger Games conveys many of the same struggles that Survivor contestants must endure while they are on the show. The Hunger Games evokes the complex strategic and emotional dynamics of a game where contestants must starve and scheme for victory. A lot of former players have gone on to say how their experience on the show, not knowing who to trust and knowing that someone you see as a friend could turn on you at any second, has had a big impact on them mentally.
When the game is over, what does that do to your ability to trust just in the world?
I went home and I wasn't right for 3 months. Wow. And I remember going to the fire station, talking to the guys that I trust with my life, and I didn't believe some of the things they said.
They are left playing a similar game to PETA, real or not real. When a player is on their way out, some have expressed a desperation to try and fight to stay in the game, as it feels like their very life is at stake. In Fishback's article, he even mentioned how in Survivor, fire represents your life.
This is part of the ritual of Tribal Council because in this game, fire represents your life. And when your fire's gone, so are you.
And when you are voted out, your torch gets snuffed, a metaphorical death of sorts. I feel like the lens of playing a reality TV game is an interesting way to view what occurs in the Hunger Games, and can potentially give more insight into the characters' minds. In this video, I will be analyzing each of the 4 films in the Hunger Games franchise. There will also be interludes throughout the video, as I highlight other aspects that contributed to the Hunger Games' impact on pop culture. I will be looking at the series in depth, so I will be going into full spoilers. Following the success of the novel, there was a considerable amount of anticipation for the film adaptations. The lead role of Katniss Everdeen was highly sought after by every young actress in Hollywood, as it was not every day that a female-led series of this magnitude was available. I always find it interesting to see the what-ifs in regards to actors who auditioned for or were considered for various roles. wondering how they would have played the character in an alternate universe. In the case of Katniss, Haley Steinfeld, Abigail Breslin, Chloe Grace Moretz, Emma Roberts, and Shailene Woodley, who later went on to star in her own YA dystopian series, were all considered for the role. Eventually, the studio decided to go with Jennifer Lawrence, announcing her casting on March 16, 2011, a few months before the release of X-Men First Class, where she portrayed Mystique. Her getting the role of Katniss would be one of the major pillars that led to her eventual superstardom. She was fresh off of a film called Winter's Bone, which won 2010's Sundance Film Festival's top award, and earned Lawrence her first Oscar nomination. There was some pushback among the fanbase, mostly being based on her looks, and her age not being quite right for the character. But author Suzanne Collins and producer Nina Jacobson were adamant that Lawrence was right for the role.
Of course, all of the things that people are saying, they're in my head too, about being too old and being blonde, even though I was gonna dye my hair. And all of these things, you know, they get to me too, because that's how I imagine the character. But hearing it from the woman who created Katniss herself, I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. And I know you can do it, and all of these things, just it gave me the boost that I needed.
Up for the male lead of Peeta Mellark were Hunter Parrish from Weeds, Evan Peters and Lucas Till of X-Men fame, and Alexander Ludwig, who would eventually be cast in the film for the role of Cato. Casting eventually decided to give the role of Peeta to Joss Hutcherson, who was a well-known child actor that starred in movies such as Zathura, Bridge to Terabithia, and Journey to the Center of the Earth.
It was at the point where I was so obsessed with getting the part that anytime I was gonna say a word that began with H, I would say Hunger Games. Like, I'm so Hunger Games to be here. Happy, sorry, it's in my head.
The third part of the main trio of leads, Gail Hawthorne, saw the likes of Robbie Amell and David Henry considered for the part, before ultimately going with Liam Hemsworth, who was at the time mostly known for being the brother of famous actor Luke Hemsworth. As a whole, the Hunger Games series was blessed in the casting department, with the three leads establishing themselves as stars in the making, and the supporting cast around them consisting of some incredible acting talent, with the likes of Donald Sutherland, Woody Harrelson, Stanley Tucci, Wes Bentley, and Elizabeth Banks. I feel like it's underreported how fantastic the casts of these movies were, and only gets more star-studded the deeper we get into the franchise. The Hunger Games premiered on March 23, 2012, and audiences were in for a treat. On my rewatch for this video, I came away incredibly impressed with just how well the movie set the tone in the opening few minutes. It opens with an interview between Caesar Flickerman and Game Master Seneca Crane. It gives the audience their first look at the over-the-top fashion of the Capitol, with Caesar's Smurf hair and Seneca's distracting beard. It also hints at the theatricality to come in the games, as well as the Capitol trying to control the narrative surrounding them, justifying their existence and talking about the good they bring for the country of Panem.
Something that knits us all together.
When asked about the signature style that Seneca brings to the games, his answer is cut off by a scream as we cut away to District 12.
What defines your personal signature?
This is great because it gives the audience the real answer to the question, rather than whatever propaganda Seneca was about to spit out. The answer is fear and pain. We are then with Prim and Katniss, establishing one of the most important relationships in the series right away. Prim had a nightmare about being picked in the games,
Primrose Everdeen,
showing the trauma the games cause for those who may never even be picked. Katniss comforts her sister, singing her a song called Deep in the Meadow. This immediately shows Katniss as her sister's protector, something that will drive many of her actions to come. Continuing the strong introduction is the establishing of District 12 and what life is like for the people living there. It looks drab, gray, and poor. The people looking tired and haggard, just trying to get by any way that they can. Establishing what life looks like in 12 works even better when contrasted with what we see of the Capitol. Where District 12 is poor and starving, the Capitol is opulent, technologically advanced, and the people are all dressed like characters from Alice in Wonderland. It shows us the inequality going on in Panem, as the Capitol exploits the districts to fund their over-the-top lifestyles, keeping all of the power as they force the districts to their knees. I think the technological advantages that the Capitol has over the districts is particularly important because it gives them more power and strength. If the districts rose up, they would be at a severe disadvantage, using untrained militia with pitchforks to fight soldiers armed with guns. The capital is not shy about showing just how advanced they are, reminding the districts not to step out of line. It's just days away from the reaping, which is the process of selecting who will be chosen as a tribute for the Hunger Games. Those eligible to be selected in the reaping are children between the ages of 12 and 18, with the older children having a higher chance of being selected, as their name is re-added every year.
How many times did your name in today?
42. Guess the odds aren't exactly in my favor.
The capital takes advantage of the poverty and hunger going on in the poorer districts by incentivizing people to put their names in more times. You can ask for extra food to help get you by, but it comes at the price of increasing your chances of getting picked. This puts people in a difficult position, as they can gamble with their future or starve in the present.
Don't take any extra food from them. It isn't worth putting your name in more times.
This drives people to consider some grim alternatives.
I'll still cook you.
Before the reaping, Katniss gives Prim a Mockingjay pin to help comfort her. She says it will protect her from being picked, only for Prim to immediately be picked.
And as long as you have it, nothing bad will happen to you.
Primrose Everdeen.
So that was a fucking lie.
If I'm Prim, I'm getting rid of that thing right away, because it's nothing but bad luck, doing the exact opposite of what it was supposed to do. I mean, what were the odds? In a roundabout way, the pin does protect her, as Katniss volunteers in her sister's place.
I volunteer! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
This is probably the most iconic moment of the first film. It was incredibly well acted, as Katniss volunteers in a state of panic and distress, doing anything to save her sister. On the boys' side, Peeta Bread Malark is chosen. He does a quick survey, wondering if anyone will volunteer in his stead, before begrudgingly walking up to take his place as the male tribute. Even though The Hunger Games is about much more than teen romance, it would be a lie to say that wasn't an element of it. The romance isn't as much of a focus as, say, a series like Twilight, but at the time it was framed in a similar way, with debates taking place between Team Peeta and Team Gale. With that said, I think it's a good time to talk about the boys. Gale is Katniss's childhood friend and confidant. After the passing of her father, Katniss's mother was left in a bad state, leaving Katniss in charge of looking after Prim. Gale is the one person who Katniss can truly confide in and who understands her, as her sister is too young to comprehend everything Katniss is going through.
He's a comfort for her, and he's been the only person for her to lean on. You know, her mum wasn't there when her dad died. She kind of lost it, and her sister's too young, so they're each other's only escape from the horrible world they live in.
They clearly care about each other and lean on each other for support. With Gale's introduction, we learn that he wants to fight against the power of the capital. He just doesn't know how. He proposes that everyone should just stop watching the games, because if no one is watching, the capital doesn't get what it wants. He thinks by going along with the games and getting invested in them, they continue to prop the capital up.
You root for your favorites, you cry when they get killed, it's sick.
Gale.
If no one watches, then they don't have a game. It's as simple as that.
And yet, he still has hope for the future, as he tells Katniss that he might have kids one day, something that Katniss says she has no interest in, as she wouldn't want to bring a child into this cruel and unfair world. Perhaps most revealing about Gale's character in the first movie is when he speaks to Katniss after she is chosen as a tribute. He tries to give her advice on the games, telling her to get a bow and to hunt. When Katniss pushes back about hunting animals versus hunting people, Gale says it's the same thing. To him, in both instances, it's life or death. If she is unable to hunt an animal, her and her family will starve. If she is unable to hunt the other tributes in the arena, they will kill her. Either way, she dies. It's the same result. I think this line of thinking is very interesting to look at when considering where Gale's character goes later on in the series. It's also important to note that Gale steps up to take care of Katniss's family in her absence, and showing him taking on the role of a protector. Moving on to Peeta, we get to meet the series' resident soft boy, who enjoys baking and painting cakes. He's just generally a nice person, who tries to see the best in everyone. He is an optimist and a go-getter, as seen by his eagerness to try and learn everything he can from Haymitch, not giving up when Haymitch dismisses him.
He's gonna come around.
Well, it's no use.
I'm gonna go talk to him.
We later learn that he has had a longtime crush on Katniss, and once showed her kindness by giving her a piece of bread when she was in a moment of desperation. Peeta doesn't think Katniss even remembers him, but that moment with the bread is something that she keeps coming back to, wanting to return that same kindness to Peeta in some way.
Katniss keeps on thinking about how Peeta helped her that one time, and she kind of feels this need to repay him in some way, and this kind of feeling that she can trust him.
When Peeta is picked for the games, it's like getting assigned to a class project with a girl you are crushing on. He now has an excuse to spend time with and get to know Katniss. The only difference is at the end of it, they'll have to kill each other. Peeta has a natural charisma and earnestness to him that makes him instantly likable, his personality being the opposite to Katniss in some ways, as she is more reserved and distant. Similar to Gale, I feel like Peeta wants to fight back in some way, but just doesn't know how. On the eve of the games, he has a conversation with Katniss. He tells her that he wants to show the Capitol that they don't own him, that they can't change him into something that he isn't.
I just don't want them to change me.
How would they change you?
I don't know. Turn me into something I'm not. I just don't want to be another piece in their game, you know? Yeah, I just keep wishing that I could think of a way to show them that they don't own me. You know, if I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
Now, I think what Peeta means in the moment is that he doesn't want them to turn him into a killer in the games. And his act of resistance later turns out to be the suicidal berries with Katniss. But big picture, this conversation becomes more important when considering Peeta's captivity and subsequent hijacking in the Mockingjay movies. It is very poignant as his greatest fear ends up coming true, as the Capitol turns him into their puppet to spew propaganda and a weapon to use against Katniss. I feel like moments like this show the richness in the writing of the series. When Katniss and Peeta are swept up from their lives and put on a train to the Capitol, we get to meet Haymitch Abernathy, who is their mentor and former winner of the Hunger Games. Haymitch competed in the 50th Hunger Games, also known as the Second Quarter Quell. Every 25 years, the Capitol decides to make the games extra spicy, and in the case of the Second Quarter Quell, they doubled the amount of tributes that were selected to participate. Haymitch managed to win the games using some trickery, involving a force field at the edge of the arena. His reward for winning was the execution of his family, as President Snow thought his trick could be seen as an act of defiance. The Haymitch we meet in the movie is over 20 years removed from his victory, and is a dejected drunkard. His experience in the games no doubt caused him severe trauma, but that was exacerbated by his role as a mentor to the District 12 tributes that followed behind him.
This mentoring is very taxing stuff.
In Catching Fire, Haymitch says that you never get off this train.
This trip, girl, wake up. This trip doesn't end when you get back home. You never get off this train.
And for him, what that entails is watching the young kids under his tutelage die each and every year. At a certain point, it can all become too much for a person, and instead of getting reinvested every year, it becomes easier to shut down and slowly drink yourself to death.
Embrace the probability of your imminent death, and know in your heart that there's nothing I can do to save you.
We then enter the part of the movie that I refer to as the pre-games, which consists of much of the theatrics involved in the Hunger Games. In reality TV shows, this pre-game period can be important in creating early favorites.
A lot of really likable people. You might like them as a villain, you might like them as a hero, but just they're fun to watch.
And the same can be said for the Hunger Games. When giving Katniss and Peeta advice, Haymitch says that the biggest key to winning is being likable and winning friends. In shows like Big Brother and Survivor, some players become known as comp beasts because they are dominant in the competitions featured throughout the season, which can win them the power to eliminate someone or protect themselves from being eliminated. You would think that this would make these players the best in the game, but if a comp beast were to go it alone and simply rely on their physical abilities, they often find themselves ganged up on and swiftly eliminated. The true best players of these games do just as Haymitch says. They are likable and make allies so that they don't have to win every competition to stay safe. They also play to the cameras. As in Big Brother, the audience is often awarded a power throughout the season, where they get to vote for the player they want to receive this gift. This is similar to how in the Hunger Games, the tributes have to try and earn sponsors that can help them in the game. You have the power, Panem. Which tribute should get the life-saving medicine they need? Text the number of the tribute's district to vote. Standard messaging fees apply. Playing with your competition, even knowing that eventually you'll have to turn on each other, is crucial for one's long-term prospects in the game, as is playing to the camera and winning over the hearts of the audience, as at the end of the day, everyone just wants good TV.
Really? You want good TV? Does everybody want good TV? Supposedly.
The Hunger Games also features pre-game interviews with its cast of tributes, giving the audience a chance to get to know them before they step into the arena. This allows the tributes to build narratives and storylines to make them more compelling in the hopes of winning sponsors. In this instance, the worst thing you can be is forgettable.
And the sponsors get to see the tributes for the first time. The importance of this moment cannot be overstated.
In the case of Katniss, she walks into her interview with some core aspects of her TV character already built. Thanks to Cinna, she is the girl on fire, making her stand out not only from previous tributes from District 12, but from all of the other tributes in the Reaping, as she didn't just do what was expected of her and dress as a coal miner. It garners immediate interest and support behind her, and in the long run, this can be seen as the first spark of the eventual wildfire that she will cause. Also, just saying, but Peeta was on fire too? The other major storyline that Katniss walks into her interview with is that she volunteered to take her sister's place. One of the elements that draws people to reality TV is seeing average everyday people make tough decisions that come from real emotions. Before even stepping into the games, Katniss has won over the masses by her selfless act of volunteering to save her sister.
I told her that I would try to win for her.
Peeta only adds to Katniss's storylines with his interview and admission of his feelings for her. Now there is a tragic love story surrounding the District 12 tributes, with the audience rooting for them to get together during the games. When Haymitch says Peeta did Katniss a favor, it couldn't be more true, as he made her not only be seen as desirable, but introduced a new element in following her journey. Katniss has a ton of storylines surrounding her and is primed to be a fan favorite.
Now, I can sell the Star-Crossed lovers from District 12.
We are not star-crossed lovers.
It's a television show. And being in love with that boy might just get you sponsors.
While on the topic of interviews, I wanted to make note of Marvel and Kato's interviews that were largely cut from the film. In regards to Marvel, first off, it's crazy to see that he is played by young Jack Quaid, but also his interview serves to highlight just how crazy he is.
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I'd watch these games, and I would see someone kill someone else.
Yes.
And I just thought, that's me.
What I think is interesting about both Marvel and Kato's interviews is that we get to see the perspective of the careers. The careers are kids from the lower districts that train in combat so that they can eventually volunteer for the games when they are 18. This gives them a massive leg up on the competition, as they have been literally training for the games their entire life, and are always being sent at the highest level of physical maturity as an 18-year-old, giving them a much better chance at winning than, say, a 12-year-old has. What's more interesting is the love and enthusiasm that they express for the games, showing us something completely different from the fear and trepidation we saw in District 12.
I mean, I think these are the greatest games ever invented, and I just want to be here to win it, and I think it's awesome, and it's something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid.
It's the Hunger Games!
I feel like this shows us how the kids closest to the capital are brainwashed by propaganda in order to make them excited about joining the games. Being told about the glory that they can bring to their district if they win, and being sold on the prestige that comes with being a victor, in a way, it's actually quite tragic. The movie does a great job with building up to the start of the games. We see Katniss's perspective as she is put in a tube-like elevator, creating a claustrophobic feeling. As she emerges from the ground, she is trying to get her bearings, trying to see what the arena is like, where the cornucopia and supplies are, and where she is in relation to the other tributes. As the countdown ends and the games finally start, the audio is cut out, helping to create the feeling of disorientation and adrenaline that Katniss is going through. It's chaos, with all of the tributes in one location, all incentivized to run towards the cornucopia in the hopes of getting some good supplies. This is the game makers trying to draw the tributes into immediate conflict.
They'll put all kinds of stuff right in front, right in the mouth of the cornucopia. There'll even be a bow there. Don't go for it.
Why not?
It's a bloodbath. They're trying to pull you in. That's not your game.
I also have to say that I really like the shot we get of Gale as the games are starting, following through with his desire to not give the Capitol what it wants, giving the audience a moment of peace before thrusting us back to Katniss. Katniss manages to avoid the bloodbath at the cornucopia, escaping with a bag of supplies. She heads out on her own, avoiding the other tributes and sleeping in trees for safety. It is in one of her tree spots where she oversees a group of careers working together alongside Peeta. She is shocked, as they appear to be hunting her, with Peeta leading them towards her. In terms of reality TV strategy, the careers have formed a core alliance.
I think I see an alliance forming.
This core has numbers and strength, making it appealing for the outsiders to join its periphery for protection, and to get just a little farther in the game. This is what Peeta is doing, because if he didn't help them find Katniss, they would just kill him right away. So it's in his best interest to appear useful to them for as long as he can.
Are you sure we shouldn't just kill him now?
Nah, he's our best chance of finding her.
The Big Alliance sees Katniss as a threat, and are targeting her when she is at her most vulnerable, as she seems to be allyless. Once all of the outside threats are eliminated, the Big Alliance will turn on its tertiary members like Peeta, and then the core will eat itself. Peeta is just trying to buy time, but adds to Katniss's uncertainty on who she can trust. Katniss and Peeta's best chance of winning is to weaken the core of this big alliance, in order to even the playing field. Katniss isn't making for very engaging television, making the most logical decisions to hide and avoid conflict. The game makers don't like this, because it makes for a boring TV show, and so they artificially control the tributes through introducing new game mechanics.
We want to see the tributes struggle. We want to see them fight for their lives. And the way to do that is to have complete control of their environment.
They set the girl on fire, before directing her right into the midst of the careers, forcing an interaction between the tributes. Now that she has been seen, the careers chase her up a tree. They ain't so good at climbing, and after trying one pot shot, they decide to wait her out. I actually think this is the audience's first indication of Peeta's true allegiance, as he is the one to suggest waiting her out, preventing the others from trying to climb again or shoot her. Little Rue pops up to offer Katniss some advice, showing her the nest of tracker jackers just waiting to be dropped on the careers. Big L on the careers part for not having anyone on guard duty to watch Katniss, but the tracker jacker gambit pays off, as Katniss eliminates a member of the Big Alliance and gets a bow.
Just like we drew it up in practice.
Perfect execution.
Well, you gotta give a lot of credit to the wasps. They were great.
But as it turns out, Katniss herself is not immune to tracker jacker venom, and she starts to hallucinate before passing out. If not for Peeta and Rue, she might have died here. This kicks off the next section of Katniss's game, which is when she aligns with Rue. Rue is one of the biggest underdogs for these games, as she is one of the youngest tributes and has a gentle disposition. When Katniss interacts with her, it's very clear that she sees Rue in a very similar way to Prim, as she wants to protect and take care of her. It could have just as easily been Prim in the games, and so seeing Rue in these situations is very hard for her. And that's why it's so tragic when Rue is killed. After pulling a big move to destroy the career supplies, Rue is killed by Marvel, leaving Katniss alone and distraught. After a runeral, Katniss turns to the cameras, giving a three-fingered salute, showing that she stands with Rue and her family and the sorrow that they are going through. Rue's death also shows us how the games can have a huge effect on the outside world, as after seeing Rue die in such a tragic way, the people of District 11 start to riot, warring against the injustice of the death of an innocent little girl. It shows that people are at the end of their ropes, and will only take so much more. Sparked by the riots, Seneca panics by introducing a new twist to the game, that two tributes can win so long as they come from the same district. Upon hearing this, Katniss sets out to find Peeta. She eventually finds him by a river, with his face painted like a rock, a scene that has lived in my mind since originally seeing it. Now I know you don't introduce camouflage cake painting in the first act to not have it pay off later, but Peeta's rock face begs so many questions. Like, why didn't he just cover himself up with more leaves to hide his face like he did with the rest of his body? Where did he get the paint supplies, and how did he manage to blend his face in when he couldn't even see what he was doing? Regardless of the answers, viewers, I'm glad he painted his face, as it allowed us to see something truly incredible. Since Katniss last saw Peeta, he has been pretty severely injured, as his leg was sliced open by a sword. As they retreat to a cave, Katniss sees a way that she can finally repay Peeta for the bread that saved her life. She starts to play into the star-crossed lovers storyline that Peeta had set up for them in the pregame. She does this in the hopes of getting some medicine to help his leg. She is full on playing to the cameras, feeding into Peeta's feelings for her even though she doesn't feel the same. It's not something she wants to do, but she is willing to do it to help save Peeta's life.
A showmance is when you have a romance on a reality show. It's not for real.
As it turns out though, she is a pretty good actor, with both Peeta and her at-home boyfriend Gale buying into the act. For Peeta, he finally feels like Katniss is reciprocating his feelings, and he confesses how he has always loved her, playing into the act even though he is being completely genuine. The games are coming to an end, and the finale is the tributes being chased down by a pack of rabid dogs. Katniss and Peeta escape to the top of the cornucopia, only to run into Cato, the last surviving tribute other than them. They fight, and Cato manages to get Peeta in a chokehold near the edge of the roof. Interestingly, Cato has a breakdown, realizing that his entire life that he dedicated to winning these games was ultimately meaningless, as the Capitol doesn't care if he lives or dies. He was just part of their machine, and by the time he has come to this realization, he is already dead.
I always was, right? I didn't know that till now.
One more kill. It's the only thing I know how to do. Bring pride to my district.
I think this is a really great moment, as it allows Cato to be more than a one-dimensional villain, as in the end, he wasn't a true villain, he was just another victim. A kid brainwashed by the system to do the bidding of the Capitol. After Cato is killed, Katniss and Peeta win, except they don't. Because there's a last-minute twist. That previous rule change about allowing 2 tributes from the same district to have a joint win, that was just a prank. We were only messing around, now kill each other. This is the perfect time to talk about Seneca Crane and what a massive idiot he is. Seneca is largely responsible for starting the uprising against the Capitol with how badly he mismanaged these games. For starters, in the pre-game phase, when he gave Katniss an 11 out of 12, what was he thinking?
An 11?
She earned it.
She shot an arrow at your head.
Well, at an apple.
Near your head.
Firstly, Katniss's display consisted of shooting 3 arrows, one of which missed. Just based on the stats, her score should be a 7.92 or 8, as she hit 66% of her shots. But he is so impressed by her shooting the apple out of the pig's mouth, while albeit cool, it results in him overrating her. This high rating increased the hype surrounding Katniss, and only further fed in to her being a fan favorite. He also panics because of the riots in District 11, and is manipulated by Haymitch into giving too much hope with the dual winner change. When talking to Snow, it's very clear that Seneca just doesn't get it, treating the games like games instead of the tool to keep the districts in the dirt.
So you like an underdog?
Everyone likes an underdog.
I don't.
Even if he agrees to Haymitch's idea, his top priority should then be to eliminate the remaining pairs as quickly as possible. The only pairs left when he announced the rule change were Katniss and Peeta and Cato and Clove. With Clove being taken care of by Thresh, Seneca should have released the mutts everywhere around Katniss and Peeta, just to ensure one of them went down. Rig it if you have to. He underestimated the power of the underdog, and when the District 12 tributes are all that remain, he can either make another last-minute rule change or let them win. By doing this 12th hour rule change, undoing his previous rule change, that doesn't make for good TV, and would no doubt leave the audience and the districts feel incredibly cheated. If he was worried about riots beforehand, the riots that would follow would be out of control, because if there is no victor, then the tiny sliver of hope being fed to the districts is a lie. So honestly, Seneca more than earns his firing, as he is told in the boldest way possible to kill himself. He's either the dumbest man alive or a secret freedom fighter. Katniss's Barry suicide plan solidifies her in the minds of the people as someone who is willing to stand up for what she believes in, as well as showing just how far she is willing to go for those she loves. Coupled with everything else that led up to this moment, volunteering for her sister, being the girl on fire, her alliance with Rue, and her romance with Peeta, she has made herself the perfect symbol for the districts to rally behind. It is also why Snow sees her as such a big threat, a threat that needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. Katniss is crowned as a victor, and Peeta won too, but they didn't give him a crown.
First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. I was talking to Katniss.
Sorry.
Haymitch stresses to Katniss that she needs to keep up her act, to try and assuage the Capitol and convince everyone that her Barry's Gambit wasn't an act of defiance, but an act of love. It's interesting, as Katniss and Peeta start heading home, Katniss plans on trying to forget everything that happened and to go back to the way things were, while Peeta doesn't want to forget, as he believes that their romance is real. But he also sees that things are changing, and there is a little more hope in the world. The first Hunger Games movie is a tremendous outing that really sets the stage for everything else that is to come. It gave us a host of compelling characters as well as a thrilling narrative. Audiences seemed to agree, as it made $695,000 worldwide at the box office and was praised by fans and critics alike. The Battle Royale format of the Hunger Games lent itself well to gaming. The Hunger Games was released as Minecraft was still on the up and up. Shortly after seeing the movie, a small team of map makers called Team Verity designed the first Minecraft Hunger Games map. Similar to the premise from the source material, in Minecraft Hunger Games, 24 players spawn into a Minecraft server with the goal of being the last player standing. There was a cornucopia set up in the center of the map, filled with loot, as well as crafting benches and hidden chests sporadically placed around the map. With the popularity of the Hunger Games and Minecraft working in tandem, the game mode quickly rose to popularity. It became even more popular after a Hunger Games match was hosted by a group of popular YouTube creators like Captain Sparkles, CNanners, among others. This creator game brought more eyes to the game mode, as these videos got millions of views. I actually remember trying to play Minecraft Hunger Games back in 2012. I remember it was incredibly tough to actually get into a game because of how crowded the servers were. In an interview with some of the larger server owners, they speculated that the game mode peaked in either early 2015 or 2013 to 2014, depending on the server. During this time, there was anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 concurrent players and over 100,000 unique visitors daily. There were also leaderboards that tracked the winning most players, with the top 10 being featured in 2013's Book of Guinness World Records, Gamer Edition. After Minecraft Hunger Games' rise to popularity, the Battle Royale genre exploded, with games like PUBG and Fortnite taking over the gaming industry. Now, there's no direct correlation or official record of these games being inspired by Minecraft Hunger Games, nor is it the first instance of a Battle Royale game. However, I think the popularity of Minecraft Hunger Games reinvigorated the market for Battle Royale games. Minecraft Hunger Games set the stage for the Battle Royale craze that came in its wake. Just as Minecraft was sucked into the stratosphere of the Hunger Games, so were reality TV simulators. Pretty niche. Prior to the Hunger Games, Brantsteele was a website that hosted the ability to simulate seasons of popular reality TV shows like Big Brother and Survivor. After the Hunger Games, they began to work on a simulator for the series, which would eventually be released on Christmas Day 2014. The simulator allows you to either experience an alternate reality to the games, where Katniss dies early and this rando District 10 tribute wins, or you can create your own cast that includes SpongeBob and the Pillsbury Doughboy and see some real shit go down. Brantsteele's Hunger Games simulator is something that has lived rent-free in my head since its creation, and back in the day it was a ton of fun to create a wacky cast and try and build your own narratives as to why the tributes are acting the way they are. The Hunger Games simulator is one of Brantsteele's most popular game modes, and you can still find people using it to this day. Every major movie has a press tour. It's just part of the business. But the Hunger Games press tours were built a little different. If you have watched any of the behind the scenes footage about the making of these movies, the thing that really stands out is how much fun the cast had making them. In almost every Woody Harrelson interview, he talks about his time on the Hunger Games being the most fun he's had making a movie.
It's just fun all day long. I think it's the funnest set I've ever been on.
And that guy's been in a lot of movies. The cast just got along so well, and that chemistry not only translated to the big screen, but to their interviews, as they genuinely seemed excited to see each other again. The press tour for Catching Fire in particular really built hype for the movie, and got fans invested in the characters and world of the Hunger Games, but also in the actors portraying them. This was also the height of the public's infatuation with Jennifer Lawrence's goofy personality, which was on full display in these interviews. During the filming of Catching Fire, Jennifer Lawrence won the Oscar for her performance in Silver Linings Playbook, which inadvertently built more hype for the Hunger Games and caused almost every interviewer to ask about her Oscar.
How many times in a week does Jennifer bring her Oscar to set?
When she first got back from winning it, it was every day. After a while, like, she saw that it was wearing off and people were getting a little annoyed, so she stopped.
So I brought two. I brought my Golden Globe too.
Exactly, yeah.
There are also a lot of surprisingly memorable moments from these press junkets. One that comes to mind is when Woody Harrelson learns that Liam Hemsworth is Chris Hemsworth's brother.
Chris Van Vliet, CBS Cleveland.
Just now. And you do have the same last name now that I think about it.
Yeah, they're brothers. Can you believe that?
I honestly never put that together.
It's just a genuinely funny moment as you see the light bulb go on in Woody's eyes. There's also the pizza story, which was memed to death.
We get there and I'm like, where's the pizza?
And during the premiere of one of the Mockingjay movies, Jennifer Lawrence accidentally kissed Natalie Dormer on the lips, giving all the entertainment sites free rein to post about the pair locking lips. I don't know, there's just a bunch of memorable moments that came from these interviews, which is not something I feel like is the case for most press tours. A lot of these interviews and compilations of them got hundreds of thousands to millions of views on YouTube, speaking to the fandom's dedication to the series. I feel like these moments between the cast as people further endeared fans to the franchise and built the culture surrounding the cast of these movies. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but I definitely felt it was worth noting when discussing the popularity of the Hunger Games and the cultural impact that they had. Gary Ross, who had directed the first film, had a scheduling conflict and was unavailable to work on Catching Fire. The production team eventually landed on Francis Lawrence, no relation to Jennifer, as Ross's replacement. Lawrence was known for his directorial work on Constantine and I Am Legend. Roughly 2 months into his time on the project, producer Nina Jacobson was so impressed by his work that she offered him to take on the helm for the next 2 movies in the franchise, which he accepted. Joining Lawrence on this film was a host of new cast members. Chief among them were Sam Claflin as Finnick Odair, Jenna Malone as Joanna Mason, and the late Philip Seymour Hoffman as Plutarch Heavensby. In the case of Claflin's casting as Finnick, I think the actor was under the most pressure of all the new cast members due to Finnick's status as a fan favorite from the books.
You read Finnick's introduction into the novel and it's Greek god, tanned, blonde, green-eyed, like God. So for me to kind of completely turn my life around, to kind of really get stuck into this character, I had to work very, very hard.
But I think he managed to meet expectations, as I think Finnick and Joanna are both instantly compelling. Catching Fire is, in my opinion, the best film in the series, and it's not even close. And I think the inclusion of these new characters played a big role in that. The movie starts out similarly to the first one, as we follow Katniss and Gale hunting. But even though we are in a familiar place, with familiar faces, something has changed. Upon returning home from the games, Katniss wanted to forget that they ever happened, and go back to the way things were, but she can't. Not just because she no longer lives in the same place, having been moved to Victor's village, but because she was changed from her experiences. We get to see her have PTSD from the games, as she is about to shoot a deer, only for her to have a vision of her killing Marvel again. Her dynamic with Gale has also subtly changed. Before, they were equals, the only person that the other could truly confide in and rely on. But now, Gale can never truly understand what Katniss went through. She is also being propped up as a victor, and has to leave to go on tour and put on a show for the cameras, while Gale is stuck in the mines.
Katniss has to spend a lot more time in the Capitol now. She's, kind of the Capitol darling. And she has to play this part and wear these clothes and be this person that makes her very uncomfortable.
It's also clear that Gale is jealous of Katniss's relationship with Peeta and their fomance. Even though it's just for the cameras and Katniss is putting on an act, it still hurts for Gale to see.
Gale, it was an act.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I did what I had to do to survive. If I didn't, I'd be dead.
And the worst part for Gale is that by surviving the games together, Katniss and Peeta share a bond and understanding between them that Gale will never have. But things aren't all peachy between Katniss and Peeta either.
It was nice acting. Almost thought that kiss was real.
As sometime after returning to District 12, Peeta put together that his feelings for Katniss were not reciprocated, and that her confessions of love were all just an act to try and save them. Their interactions now are cold but formal. Peeta tries to win Katniss back over by using his one move.
Would you like some bread, Katniss?
I joke, but I do think there is something to this, as it feels like a callback to him giving her bread in the first movie. As they are getting ready for their victory tour, President Snow pays Katniss a surprise visit. Since the end of the 74th Games and Katniss's double suicide gambit, Snow has been keeping an eye on the districts for any signs of resistance. He views the girl on fire and her act of defiance as the potential catalyst for the end of his reign, and so he is intent on stamping it out while he still can. Snow strikes a deal with Katniss that she is to throw herself fully into her fomance with Peeta and convince the districts that everything she did was because of this love. He tells her that if she is unable to do as he says, there will be consequences.
You should imagine thousands upon thousands of your people dead. This town of yours reduced to ashes. Imagine it gone, made radioactive, buried under dirt as if it had never existed, like District 13.
He essentially promises to destroy District 12 at the start of the film, and let's just say, he keeps his promises. When they go on the victory tour, they quickly learn that this is for the rest of their lives. They try to go off script in District 11, speaking from the heart. This inspires the crowd as they do the three-finger salute, showing that they stand with them. However, the Peacekeepers are looking for any excuse to lay down the law. Similarly to how watching the Star Wars prequels, I see and meme every line of dialogue, when I watch this scene, the only thing I can think of is Bad Lip Reading's version, featuring the Obsidiates.
Musical reply. Killed it, come on.
Following the chaos of their first stop, we get a great sequence of their life on the road, showing us how they are trying to play their roles to avoid more deaths, as they are isolated on the train with only each other for comfort. On their tour, we start to get glimpses of the civil unrest rising to the surface, as we see writings on the wall and the crowd saluting them even without any prompting. Realizing that this is going to be the rest of their lives, they decide to get married, hoping to further sell the idea of their love.
To a long and prosperous life full of bread and happiness.
As the tour finishes at President Snow's mansion, we see him give Katniss a little head shake, telling us that she failed to meet his expectations. We also get to see that the Capitol is so intent on overindulging that they chug throw-up juice so that they can keep eating. All this while the districts are starving. There's also a little hint at Snow's disgusting mouth sores, as he gives us some major backwash. When the tour ends, you get the sense that Katniss knows something big is coming, and so she wants to get out of Dodge as fast as she can. Katniss's main motivation throughout most of the series is survival, and to protect those she cares about. Even though people are starting to rally behind her against the Capitol, she is not ready for that responsibility and wants to run away. She goes to Gale and tells him about Snow's threat to her. She says that they should gather their families and make a run for it, hiding in the woods.
We have to go, Gale, before they kill us. They will kill us.
People are looking at you, Katniss.
I don't want anyone looking to me. I can't help them.
Now this is actually something Gale suggested to Katniss in the first movie, but he is no longer interested in walking down such a path. Gale always wanted to fight back against the Capitol, and since the last games, people are starting to wake up, and are more willing to fight for what they deserve.
You've given them an opportunity. They just have to be brave enough to take it. There's already talk in the minds. People want to fight.
He wants to be part of that fight and the change it brings. And that's why he is so eager to charge in when he sees a peacekeeper abusing their power. This results in Gale being strung up and publicly lashed. When Katniss sees this, she steps in between the peacekeeper and Gale. Now, this particular peacekeeper has been living under a rock and doesn't know who Katniss Everdeen is. But once it's explained to him by Haymitch and Peeta, who also step in, the peacekeeper has no choice but to relent. If he were to follow through on his threat and kill 3 victors, Katniss chief among them, he would only cause greater upheaval and unrest in the districts. His only option is to let them go. From the onlookers of District 12, this only serves to reinforce their belief in Katniss, as she put her life on the line for an average person. They see her as someone who is willing to fight for them, and if she is willing to fight for them, they are willing to fight for her. Snow sees this and realizes it's an even bigger issue than he thought. Over the years, the propaganda and focus placed on the former victors has created a number of highly influential individuals that all have a reason to hate the capital. He has let too many of them pile up, to the point that there are enough of them and from enough districts that if they throw their support behind Katniss and what she stands for, he could have a real problem on his hands.
Now, because of her, they all pose a threat. Because of her, they all think they're invincible.
He is mulling over his options with Plutarch Heavensbee, the new games maker, who is replacing Seneca Crane. Plutarch comes across way more calculating and deliberate than Seneca ever did. He makes his pitch to Snow that Katniss should die, but in the right way and at the right time, so that they don't accidentally create a martyr. His suggestion is to continually promote Katniss in a way that changes how the public views her. In order to attack her and what she stands for, they need to attack her image and relatability. Maybe she was once just an average girl from District 12, but now she is a rich elite that is planning an extravagant wedding while everyone else starves. He also suggests intercutting the news of her wedding with news of floggings and deaths, trying to make the association between her and pain. Now these are actually some really good ideas. Maybe even a little too good considering we ultimately know that Plutarch is a double agent and actually wants Katniss to lead a rebellion against the capital. Plutarch kind of gives me similar vibes to Varys from Game of Thrones. He is an agent of the realm, or in this case, Panem, and will play off the figureheads against each other in order to bring about the best possible change for the people. In order to remedy his victor problem, President Snow announces that for the third quarter quell, the tributes will be made up of previous victors. Now this is a pretty big brain play by Snow, as Katniss has to participate by default, being the only female victor from District 12. It will also eliminate the surplus of victors who have become influential in their own right. Funny enough, Survivor had a quarter quell of their own for the 40th season of the show, aptly titled Winners at War. Now returning player seasons are a staple of reality TV, as the audience comes in even more excited, as they are already familiar with and invested in the contestants. By having all winners, the audience gets to see the best of the best go at it, to crown the victor of victors. Now, it's probably a little more bittersweet in the case of the Hunger Games, as the citizenry, while excited to see their favorite victors again, they know that they will likely be killed in the games, something that they don't want to happen. Even though Katniss's fate is already decided, the male tribute from District 12 is still up in the air, as it will be either Peeta or Haymitch. It's all dependent on whose name will be drawn, as whoever's name isn't drawn is going to volunteer. Peeta wants to volunteer so that he can go back into the games and try to protect Katniss, whereas Haymitch is going to volunteer because Katniss wants to protect Peeta, and asks Haymitch to step in on his behalf. Asking Haymitch to go back into the games is asking a lot, but Haymitch has grown to care for both his former mentees, and he sees the good and hope that radiates from them.
Peeta has to survive. We have to do whatever it takes to save him.
All right, if they call his name, I'll volunteer in his place.
However, it ultimately doesn't matter, as fate has other plans, with Haymitch's name being picked, giving Peeta the opportunity to volunteer.
Haymitch Abernathy.
I volunteer as tribute.
I can't let you do that.
You can't stop me.
Peeta,
let go.
I will say though, the rules around volunteering seem a little confusing. Why couldn't they just volunteer without having a name drawn? When the careers volunteer, do they wait for some random kid's name to be drawn before volunteering? We slowly get a glimpse at some of the returning players, like the Wonder Twins, Shark Teeth, the Nerds, and the Morphlings. But the real showstoppers are Finnick Odair and Joanna Mason. They both have such an innate charisma about them that has the audience leaning in every time they are on screen. They both have an iconic moment in this pre-game phase, with Finnick eating a sugar cube like a smug bastard, and Joanna putting on a show in the elevator. The reactions in the elevator scene are just priceless. Finnick comes across as a cocksure playboy, a darling of the capital who likes to get to know people's secrets so that he can use them for his own advantage. But much of this is a facade, and at his core he is a deeply caring and moral person.
Beneath the sort of confident, charming, manipulative and very sexual exterior is a very sort of insecure, broken, damaged soul.
We get hints at this through his relationships with Annie Cresta, his girlfriend, and Mags, his former mentor. Finnick cares deeply for them and is willing to put his life on the line for Mags, even though she has little chance of getting out of the games alive due to her advanced age. His talk of secrets is less about him controlling people and using them to do his bidding, and more a means of protecting himself from being used in similar ways. He won the games as a 14-year-old, the youngest victor in the history of the games, and was subsequently thought of as desirable. This made him in high demand by much of the capital elite, and he has had to do his best to adapt and survive these circumstances. Katniss has difficulty seeing past Finnick's devilish mask, to see the person behind all of the pomp and circumstance. In general, Katniss is drawn to outcasts and underdogs, and that is not the vibe Finnick gives off at all. Joanna is another interesting case, because to me, I feel like she is the embodiment of the district's anger.
Yes, I'm angry. You know, I'm getting totally screwed over here.
She was plucked from her life and forced to fight to the death, under the promise that if she won, she would be left alone to try and live in peace. Not only was that not the case, but now they are dragging her back to try and kill her again. She says the quiet thoughts out loud, as she is very abrasive. Now, whenever there is a returning player season on Survivor or Big Brother, before the game has ever officially started, often before the cast is even finalized, the game has already begun.
And the person basically told me, like, get your head out of your ass and get your head in the game. The game's already started. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, look, everyone's already like, you know, they know each other and there's lots of chatter going on. And if you're just like completely out of it, then you're going to have no shot.
There are communities of alumni that all attend the same events and have gotten to know each other over the years. These pre-existing relationships have a massive impact on the game because they know each other as friends outside of the confines of the game. It's much more difficult to turn on a real-life friend than it is turning on someone that you just met.
Let's face it, I mean, these Quarter Quell tributes have known each other for 10, 20, 30 years.
You're like you and me deciding to kill each other.
That is not a choice that I would like to have to make.
As a result, Katniss and Peeta are at a severe disadvantage, as they don't have any previous connections with the past victors. They are easy targets because no one has any attachment to them, making it easier to take them out.
You're starting at a disadvantage. Most of these people have been friends for years.
That just puts us higher on their kill list.
They need to overcome this obstacle in any way that they can, and try to use Haymitch's relationships as a bridge to build allies. During the Caesar propaganda tour, the victors aren't happy about going back into the games, and so they are using every ounce of influence they have to prevent the games from happening. The people of the capital have grown to love these victors, and would likely protest to some degree as a means of saving their favorites. Snow orders Katniss to wear her wedding dress for her interview, but Cinna has made a last-minute alteration, which is another spark of defiance. Peeta dials things up to 11 as he announces that Katniss is pregnant, causing the crowd to go into a frenzy. As the games are about to start, Haymitch reminds Katniss not to forget who the real enemy is.
Katniss, when you're in the arena, remember who the real enemy is.
Haymitch knows of the larger plan at play and doesn't want Katniss to lose herself in the games, something that would play right into Snow's hand. Katniss says a final goodbye to Cinna before climbing into her tube. The second the tube locks her in, some peacekeepers come in and attack Cinna. You see, after his most recent fashion design, Cinna found himself at the top of Snow's to kill list, attacking him right in front of Katniss's eyes as she is helpless to do anything is a brutal and cunning way of rattling her right before the games start. It's an amazing sequence as Katniss shoots up to the surface, her expression turning from shock and fear to an embittered determination. The actual transition is also incredibly cool, as the movie switches from 35mm film to IMAX. Lawrence talked about using this to denote the shift in the movie, as the games are shot entirely in IMAX.
We decided to use the IMAX thematically for the arena. We decided, you know what, we're going to stay scope all the way up until the moment she goes into the arena. And then as she's going up that elevator, that screen will open up.
It's the attention to detail like this that makes this movie so good. The start of the games continues to be incredible as we get our first glimpse at the arena, which looks like a giant dial with a large body of water surrounded by a tropical forest. Katniss puts her game face on as she tries to collect herself and find Peeta. Unlike last time, Katniss doesn't avoid the fray. This time she heads straight to the center of the cornucopia. She beats Aquaman in a foot race, reaching the cornucopia and grabbing a bow. She draws the fire at Finnick before he flashes the gold bracelet on his wrist, signaling that he has made an agreement with Haymitch to align with Katniss and Peeta.
Good thing we're allies, right?
Where did you get that?
Where do you think?
Katniss still isn't sure about Finnick, but has no choice but to trust him in the moment. And Katniss's trust issues are a continued theme throughout these games, as the game starts to play on her mind.
This is a game where you have to trust someone, but inherently you're not supposed to trust anybody.
Finnick has her back at the cornucopia, saves Peeta twice, and yet Katniss's instincts keep telling her not to trust him, to only trust herself and Peeta.
I can take first watch.
Not a chance.
Hell, when Finnick goes to give Peeta mouth-to-mouth, Katniss's first reaction is to get ready to attack Finnick. Finnick is being the most trustworthy of allies when it comes to his actions, but when it comes to what he says, he can sometimes say things that make Katniss feel less solid about him. After Mags dies and Katniss tries to comfort him, Finnick brushes her off, I think trying to convince himself that there was nothing he could do.
I'm sorry about Mags.
She was never gonna make it.
But Katniss takes his statement as something colder and more nefarious than he intended.
A guy like that has to know she's not going to make it. I bet when it really comes down to it, he won't protect her.
His words make him a suspicious ally in Katniss's mind. The moment where Peeta almost dies is pivotal for Katniss's relationship with him. Heading into the games, she made Haymitch promise to try and help Peeta get out at any cost. That no matter what, Peeta is to be the priority. Katniss has started to put Peeta's life above her own. Her feelings of indifference have slowly started to transform, as Peeta has continued to show himself to be an upstanding moral person. Where the districts look to Katniss for hope, Katniss looks to Peeta. I think Katniss compares herself to Peeta at times and comes out feeling down on herself. She sees the good and the value in Peeta, but doesn't always seem to see it in herself. When she sees Peeta blown back by the force field and thinks she's lost him, how much she cares about him bubbles to the surface. As the games go on, she isn't playing the part in the same way that she was before. When Peeta shows her the locket he had made for her, with pictures of her sister, mother, and Gale, he is trying to tell her that he is willing to do what he can to help reunite her with them and live a happy life. Peeta has accepted that Katniss doesn't share his feelings, and ironically, just as he is ready to bow out, Katniss's feelings towards him start to become genuine.
What about you?
Nobody needs me.
I do. I need you.
The games themselves are great fun, as the victors are trying to figure out how the arena works. Facing obstacles like acid fog, killer monkeys, blood rain, and jabberjays, it's greatly satisfying to watch them piece it all together. We get hints about the bigger plan at play as the Morphling sacrifices themselves to save Peeta. They link up with Joanna, Beetee, and Wyrus, forming the Majority Alliance. Once again, Katniss is put off by Joanna, even though she has done nothing but do what Katniss wanted, protect Beetee and Wyrus. Wyrus warns us about TikTok, allowing Katniss to figure out the truth about the arena, that it's really a big clock. We get a really cool set piece as the game makers put a spin on things, as there is a fight at the cornucopia. After the events of the cornucopia, the Majority Alliance of Katniss, Peeta, Finnick, Joanna, and Beetee outnumber the Career Alliance. With the numbers dwindling, the necessity to start looking at friends as foes becomes more of an immediate consideration. Katniss was already dubious about trusting Finnick and Joanna, and now knowing that they will have to turn on each other sooner rather than later, she doesn't want to be the one to fire the first shot. She suggests to Peeta that they dip out, but Peeta wants to stay until nighttime to try and execute Beetee's plan. He still trusts them and doesn't think they'll turn on each other.
I don't want to be the one that shoots first.
What if they don't either? What if all of us refuse to shoot first? Worked first last time.
They're not going to make that same mistake again.
Now, Katniss doesn't know that there is a secret plan, and that Finnick, Joanna, and Beetee are in on it, and aren't going to turn on them no matter what. But given the information she has, splitting off is probably the right move. She should hope that the Careers and Finnick's group take each other out, and then Katniss and Peeta can come in for the cleanup. But if she does this, and eventually turns on her allies, she gives Snow exactly what he wants. Katniss hasn't had to get her hands dirty thus far. But if the game continues and she turns on her alliance, kills Finnick, someone who helped and saved her and Peeta multiple times, people won't look at her the same way. She will be tainted and no longer the virtuous rallying cry that can unite the districts. The trauma of the game has seeped into Katniss's psyche, and she struggles to try and make the lesser game move, but the more moral move. Things only get more difficult for her, as strapped for time, Joanna is a little rough with how she de-chips Katniss, leading to Katniss to believe that Joanna and Finnick are turning on her and Peeta. Katniss runs back to the lightning tree just in time to see Beetee get yeeted. She can't find any sign of Peeta and fears the worst. Finnick hears her calling out for Peeta and runs back. As Katniss is creeping in the bushes, an arrow pointed squarely at Finnick's chest. This is what the games have all been leading up to. Will Katniss give in to fear and paranoia, or will she stand true to what she believes in? Finnick repeats to her what Haymitch said.
Remember who the real enemy is.
Reminding her that the victors are all just pawns. The true enemy is much bigger. She points her arrow to the sky and lets loose, just as the lightning strikes the tree. The arrow causes a massive explosion, resulting in a blackout, and destroys the dome of the arena. As Katniss is airlifted, the finale continues to be absolutely fantastic, as we get the big reveal about the machinations that were going on behind the scenes.
You have been our mission from the beginning. The plan was always to get you out. Half the tributes were in on it. This is the revolution, and you are the Mockingjay.
Haymitch, Plutarch, and the other victors were working towards the goal of saving Katniss and Peeta to unite the districts against the capital. They were working alongside District 13, who was thought to be destroyed, but actually has a secret underground base. It's not all good news though, as Peeta and Joanna were captured by the capital, the news of this sending Katniss into a frenzy. Staying true to his promise, Snow had ordered the complete destruction of District 12, shocking Katniss and the audience. The film ends on a close-up of Katniss, her hatred and resolve to destroy the capital and rescue Peeta burning brighter than ever. I think there was a bit of danger for Catching Fire, as it largely follows the same structure as the first movie. It could have felt like watching the same story, but I think Catching Fire did such a great job introducing new elements, expanding the scope of the previously established world, and adding depth to the characters, allowing it to build off the success of the first film, making it better in just about every conceivable way. I think it's the best movie in the series, with the ending in particular being fantastic. It premiered on November 22nd, 2013, and became the highest grossing movie in the series, amassing $865,000 worldwide. Another aspect that I wanted to bring up, as I think it contributed to the franchise's success, was its innovative marketing techniques. The digital marketing and communications agency Mint Twist conducted a digital marketing case study of The Hunger Games just before the release of the third film. In their study, they highlighted The Hunger Games' focus on using the digital landscape to their advantage. They showed the growth The Hunger Games experienced on sites like Facebook and Twitter, and praised the marketing team's dedication to producing engaging content. One of the major takeaways they attributed to The Hunger Games' success was its ability to create a narrative surrounding its strategy. The focus of this being the website Capital Couture, which was originally launched on January 23, 2012, and was maintained until November 20th, 2015. Although you can still access most of its posts from its archived Tumblr page. It was written as an in-universe website, designed to keep the people of Panem up to date on the latest fashion trends, as well as the latest happenings concerning the annual Hunger Games. Articles varied from learning how to achieve Seneca Crane's signature beard style, trying to answer the question why President Snow is so stylish, to speculating about news surrounding the tributes in the upcoming games. They also posted in-world interviews with characters. Some of the writing can come off a bit fanfiction-y, but I appreciate the effort nonetheless. On stage, I watch as Finnick Odair gives a rousing but cryptic declaration of love, without naming the object of his affection. The audience swoons. I too find my pulse jump. Afterward, he saunters up to me, and before I can ask him a question, Odair leans in close, sighs, and whispers in my ear, "That dress is a knockout." He walks away, without a backward glance. I can't feel my feet. They had a number of promotional campaigns during its time, one of which, in the lead up to Catching Fire, was the Game Faces campaign, where they would give scores to each tribute based on their style. The categories consisted of quaff, pout, poise, and overall style. If you're curious, the highest quaff was a tie between Katniss and Joanna. Pout went to Katniss. Poise was a three-way tie between Katniss, Peeta, and Finnick, and Katniss had the highest overall score. A little bit biased if you ask me, as people like Gloss and Kashmir were highly underrated. These posts would also sometimes reveal previously unknown information about the tributes, like that Inabaria won the 60-second games. Following the release of Catching Fire, and in the lead up to Mockingjay Part 1, Capital Couture began their Capital Run 1 Panem campaign. For this, they had posts called District Heroes, where a member of a district was highlighted with the focus of showing how they contributed to the Capital's success. They also had victory tour posters from previous victors trying to drum up some more support, highlighting the relationship these victors had with the Capital. Two of the victors, Porter Millicent Tripp, winner of the 38th games, and Augustus Braun, known as the Cavalier Career, who won the 67th games, were both invented by the site. The other victor that was focused on was Mags, showing us her back in her youth. Tying more directly into the promotional teasers for Mockingjay Part 1 were the Capital Citizen living portraits of Peeta and Joanna. These outfits and the fully whited out style were used in a number of trailers where President Snow addresses the people of Panem, using Peeta and Joanna as his props. In these trailers, Snow focuses on the ideas of uniting under one Panem, trying to keep his supporters from turning to the rebels' cause.
I know you will stand with me, with us, with all of us, together, as one.
The presence of peacekeepers and veiled threats in Snow's doublespeak warned the public that if they were to deviate from this course, there would be significant consequences. One of these broadcasts is broken up by Beatty, who says that the Mockingjay lives. This leads us to the other teasers from the perspective of the rebels, and the propos being created by Katniss and Plutarch. One has Katniss standing on the iconic three-finger salute, while another asks the people to stand with the Mockingjay and fight for the revolution as a choreographed dance is going on in the background. What I really appreciate about these trailers are that they tie in really well with the movies, as creating propos and fighting the misinformation coming out of the Capitol are crucial to the upcoming films. The marketing feels refreshing, and if anything, gets fans more immersed in the world. I also wanted to bring up District Voices, which was a promotional campaign where Lionsgate teamed up with a number of online content creators and had them make videos presented as programming from Capital TV.
And don't forget to register for updates from Capital TV. It's mandatory.
The campaign featured the YouTube channels Fight Tips, Veritasium, iJustine, Threadbanger, and Feast of Fiction, with each of them taking on the perspective of one of the districts. They also paired the channel with a district that related to the usual content that they produced, like how Feast of Fiction was District 9, known for their grain, and their video had them baking. It wasn't always the case, as I doubt iJustine had more content focused on building hovercrafts and war jeeps, but who knows. I feel like this shows that the marketing team for the Hunger Games took full advantage of the digital age that we live in, and its interactive and immersive marketing strategy only helped to contribute to the series' success. The production schedule for these movies was pretty intense, as director Francis Lawrence was still working on Catching Fire and had already begun pre-production for the next two movies. The Hunger Games movies were being adapted just after the Harry Potter series had finished. Harry Potter's production team had decided that splitting the final book, Deathly Hallows, into two movies was necessary in order to bring their decade-long journey to a satisfying conclusion. In my opinion, I think the final movie split in the case of Harry Potter was justified and actually worked quite well. Unfortunately, it created this trend of splitting the final book in a series into 2 movies when adapting it to the big screen. One can easily fall victim to the trap of more is better, as it keeps these characters' journeys going for a longer period of time. It is also a very enticing prospect for studios who can bank on another successful box office instead of having to take a risk with developing a new series. Francis Lawrence has since come out and said he wasn't always on board with splitting the final movie in 2, recognizing why it upset some fans.
I was not a big fan of doing it. I wish that we would have done just one complete movie. I don't know, maybe you sort of trick yourself into thinking that you're telling these 2 sort of distinct stories, which we kind of are, but it still is a little manipulative, that when you do a first half of a movie and then you're going to make people wait a year for a second half, I can see how it would annoy some.
I think The Hunger Games ran into a few issues when they decided to split the final book into 2 movies. I think the split hurts Mockingjay Part 1 much more than it does Part 2, as Part 1 is forced to tread water as it delays a resolution to the story, whereas Part 2 is all about payoff, which is just naturally going to be more compelling. The first 2 movies in the series could effectively be split up into 2 sections, the lead up to the games and the games themselves. Mockingjay Part 1 is like you extended the lead up to the games by another hour, and then ended the movie right as the games were about to start. As a viewer, it can feel frustrating and almost as if the rug has been ripped out from under you. I think Mockingjay Part 1 is easily the worst film in the original series, and I think a lot of that can be chalked up to its pacing issues that came as a result of the split. That is not to say that it is all bad, and if I'm being honest, I feel like a lot more happened than what I expected based on my memory of the movie. There are actually some high-intensity moments of action, like the visit to the District 8 hospital, the bombing of District 13, and subsequent stair sequence where Prim goes to save her cat.
You went back for the cat? What were you thinking? I wasn't gonna leave him behind. I couldn't live with myself.
And the mission to rescue the victors, that serves as the climax to the film. The movie continued the trend of introducing new interesting characters played by all-star actors. Julianne Moore is introduced as President Alma Coin, the leader of District 13 and President Snow's reflection.
2 years ago, my daughter started reading Hunger Games. She was 10 and we were on vacation, so I picked up her copy of the book, and the first thing I thought was, gosh, who's playing Coin?
I was shocked to see Mahershala Ali pop up as Boggs. Ali talked about how part of the appeal of joining the project was the opportunity to work alongside so many talented actors, showing that The Hunger Games carried with it some esteem just based on its star-studded cast.
What got me so excited about being involved in it is really, first and foremost, the cast, half of which are all on my bucket list, people I've always wanted to work with.
When Katniss wakes up in 13, she is still reeling from what happened in the games. She feels betrayed by Haymitch for breaking his promise of prioritizing Peeta. Her home was destroyed, and she has to try and learn to live in this new place, as Coin and Plutarch try to use her as a means to their own ends.
She wakes up in a district that she didn't even know existed. She's lost her home. She's completely bare and has to rebuild herself.
When she is initially approached to star in a series of propos as the Mockingjay to try and garner support for the revolution, she isn't all that interested. It's only after seeing the destruction of District 12, coupled with trying to protect Peeta, that she agrees, giving Coin a list of demands.
Peeta and the other tributes will be rescued at the earliest opportunity. If and when Peeta is liberated, he will receive a full and unconditional pardon. No punishment will be inflicted.
When the movie starts, Katniss is not a genuine revolutionary. Up to this point, her main objective was always to protect the one she loved. Self-preservation, and that's not a bad thing. She hates Snow and all that the Capitol stands for, but she never saw herself as the person to put an end to it. In her mind, she is just an average girl, trying to survive. She only agrees to be the Mockingjay as a means of protecting Peeta, but but as time goes on, Katniss's character and her motivations subtly grow.
She's a very reluctant hero because she's just in the first movie, she just wanted to save her sister and her family, and then she just wanted to save herself. In the third book is when she really starts to realize the impact that she has and that she has a choice.
The Propos are the primary focus of Mockingjay Part 1, which is both to the film's success and detriment. The initial plan concerning the Propos is to keep Katniss underground in 13 and have her perform scripted schlock. They don't want her to be a revolutionary, they just want her to look like one. But this was always doomed to fail, as Katniss being seen as a puppet and someone who is unwilling to practice what she preaches would be a surefire way to extinguish the hope of the masses. Jennifer Lawrence's portrayal of Katniss's bad acting and Philip Seymour Hoffman's indignation are both genuinely funny, especially Hoffman's line read of,
"You've just been in battle!" I'm sorry. Excuse my outburst. You've just been in battle.
And so they decide to put Katniss in the field, to allow her to be her authentic self, the person who is able to become a symbol by doing what she believes. Katniss is full content-pilled, mentioning that the most important thing is getting some good footage.
And if you're killed?
Make sure you get it on camera.
We meet Katniss's Propo team consisting of Gale, Messala, Castor, Pollux, and Cressida. What's noteworthy about them is that they all hail from the capital, and had they chose to stay there, would have had prosperous careers as filmmakers. Cressida explicitly says that she left for Katniss, and that she believes in her. I feel like this illustrates that there have long been people in the capital who disagreed with Snow and his policies, but they stayed because they couldn't see a way to fight back. Katniss has given everyone hope and something to rally behind. It also shows that support for the revolution can be found all over Panem, including in the capital itself. One gripe I have, though, about the Propo team is where's Finnick? Finnick was one of the most compelling characters from the previous movie, and here he is completely sidelined, and I'm not really sure why. Considering victors have a level of influence and sway, it feels like a missed opportunity not to have Finnick as a member of the Propo team, as his voice might be able to reach some that Katniss can't. He is from one of the lower districts and spent a lot of time in the capital, so I would think having him throw his support behind the revolution would lend it some more credence. As it is, he is relegated to standing around looking sad, and occasionally being a sounding board for Katniss. He does good with the limited role he is given, saying that he wished Annie, Joanna, and Peeta were dead instead of the capital's prisoners, warning the audience just how horrible their treatment will be.
I wish they were all dead and we were too.
The lack of Joanna is equally as upsetting, but does make more sense given her captivity. I do wish, though, that we saw a little bit of her being used as the Capitol's pawn, similar to Peeta. She is in the promotional material in her Capitol's best, but nowhere to be seen in the movie. Speaking of the Capitol's propaganda, Snow is using Peeta the same way that Coin is using Katniss.
Peeta is the Capitol's weapon, the same way you're ours.
It makes sense given Peeta's relationship to Katniss, as well as being a favorite from the recent games. I know I joked about it earlier, but Peeta was on fire too, and was one half of Panem's favorite couple, so having him actively speaking against the war and revolution could hold a lot of weight in the eyes of many. Since he still has the image of being of the people, a simple baker's boy, calling for an end to the violence sounds more reasonable coming from him than it would someone else. It's interesting to see how much he has changed every time we see him on the screen, as he slowly gets more sickly looking and gaunt. It also has the audience asking questions about what Peeta is going through, and why he is saying these things. Gale makes a comment calling Peeta a coward, saying that he would never say those things, not even if he was tortured.
I saw a coward.
You don't have any idea what he's going
I don't care. I would never say what he just said.
That's some big talk. Let's see what you're saying after being poisoned with Tracker Jack or Venom. Interesting enough though, during Peeta's second broadcast, he actually raises some good points when he starts speaking directly to Katniss. He asks her if she can really trust who she is working with.
Can you trust the people you're working with? Do you know what they really want?
And we know after finishing the series that no, she can't fully trust her side, as Coin is just as bad as Snow in many ways. I feel like in the Peeta vs. Gale war for Katniss's and the audience's heart, you could say that the first two movies focused on Peeta, and the last two were Gale-centric. For the first time in the series, Gale is front and center. When Katniss and Peeta were fighting in the arena, Gale was at home and was present for the destruction of District 12. After Katniss shot her arrow, the Peacekeepers pulled out, and Gale knew what was up. He did his best to try and save as many people as he could, but some were too scared to get away, fearing that the Peacekeepers would come back and hurt them. He was there when his home and the 10,000 innocent people who lived there were bombed. I think it's one thing to see the aftermath of something, and another to be there on the ground when it's happening, being completely helpless as you witness the violence that people are capable of. I feel like seeing this changed Gale to an extent, or at the least, radicalized him to a new degree. After this event, he loses any sympathy he might have had for the people living in the capital and the lower districts. To him, the blood of 12 is on all of them for standing by and doing nothing, while Snow sowed destruction. It's why, going forward, Gale is ruthless in his approach to warfare, othering enemies and showing them no mercy, to soldiers or civilians. His feelings for Katniss are just as strong as ever, and he is by her side for much of the movie. He joins Katniss on her trip to visit the injured of District 8. I think this trip is where Katniss starts to become a genuine revolutionary. She sees the state of these people and wants to help them any way she can, and is surprised that her presence alone, just her being there, does a ton to raise their spirits. She feels a kinship with these people, having both shared such hardships. And that's also why it's so devastating when Snow orders the hospital bombed, just casually committing war crimes. Her speech following the bombing is genuine, as she is racked with grief and anger. I just wanted to highlight that Jennifer Lawrence is fantastic in this scene.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourself.
One thing I will say though, is that the propo they make from Katniss's 2-for-1 shot is a little head scratching. Where did they get that footage? The cameramen are nowhere to be seen, it's just Katniss and Gale on the roof. Also, it looks like the planes crash into the hospital, really making sure to kill off any stragglers. Don't worry, they cut the clip off before we could see that, so it's all good. As the crew works on more propos, we are treated with the Hanging Tree song.
I don't really think anyone wants to hear me sing.
In the film, they use it as a backing track for one of their propos, and it becomes a marching cry for the rebels. One thing I have to commend this movie on is how they show the impact the propos are having on the revolution, allowing the audience to see what Katniss's efforts are having on the district's morale. The song itself is surprisingly catchy. The lyrics are taken from the book, but the Lumineers and composer for the series James Newton Howard actually worked on creating the melody and instrumentation. The song peaked at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, which is pretty good. Gale knows that Katniss won't be able to really be with him until Peeta is rescued. And that's why after the bombing of 13 and the warning Peeta gave, Coin sanctions a mission to rescue the victors, which Gale is the first to volunteer for. For Coin, it makes sense not just because of what Peeta did in saving lives and making Katniss happy, but it also takes away the Capitol's propaganda weapon. The mission itself is actually pretty tense, with the film cutting between Gale's team infiltrating the Tribute's tower and Finnick live streaming as a distraction. Finnick was called off the bench and goes on to give a great monologue, airing out just how deplorable Snow really is. He talks about the sores in Snow's mouth from poisoning his political rivals, and how he would drink from the same glass to avoid suspicion, unbeknownst to everyone else that he had already taken the antidote. More disturbing though, is how Finnick goes on to explain that after winning the games as a 14-year-old, Snow sold him for his body, essentially prostituting him under the threat of killing his whole family should he refuse. It's devastating to hear what he went through, and the fact that he is able to put on such a brave face in spite of all he has been through shows incredible strength of character. It seems like the jig is up, and the SEAL team is found out, prompting Katniss to call Snow. Snow reveals that he knows about the plan to rescue the victors in a mic drop moment. Katniss starts to panic, thinking that both Gale and Peeta are as good as dead, but it turns out Snow let the SEAL team escape. Annie, Joanna, and Peeta were all rescued, with Peeta and Joanna being in terrible shape. Gale wonders why they just let them leave, question that is answered as soon as Katniss goes to see Peeta. Peeta looks even sicker than he did on camera, his eyes possessed by hatred. Upon seeing Katniss, he immediately attacks her, trying to kill her. And damn, it's gotta be said that skinny Peeta is strong as hell. He's eventually knocked out by Boggs as the movie cuts to black. Originally, this was supposed to be where the movie ended.
I started to really get worried about ending with the kind of cliffhanger where you can end on something really surprising and shocking and just go to black and make people wait a year.
And I am so happy that it did not end like that. I feel like it would have only exacerbated the frustrations of audiences for having to wait a full year to get any closure. Instead, the ending we got is actually pretty solid, as Katniss learns that Peeta was hijacked. What this means is that the Capitol tortured Peeta, using pain and fear to alter his memories and feelings he has of certain people, specifically Katniss. They turned him into a weapon whose sole purpose for existing is to kill Katniss.
It's the things we love most that destroy us.
This is devastating for a number of reasons. Firstly is what Peeta said about not wanting the Capitol to change him, as his worst fear has come true. They have also taken the person he cares about most and made him despise her. It's also heartbreaking from Katniss's perspective, as she sees the sweetest person she knew now turned into a monster, used as a tool by Snow to taunt her. I have to give credit to Josh Hutcherson, as he gives us everything in bringing this manic, crazed Peeta to life. The movie ends with Katniss going to see Peeta, as Coin gives a speech that has a weirdly eerie undertone. Coin is giving a little too much Sheev Palpatine for comfort.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
I still think Mockingjay Part 1 is the weakest in the series, but it is still an enjoyable movie. However, I do think it killed some of the hype that the series had after catching fire, resulting in some fans checking out. I also think it alienated some people who liked the series mostly for the games aspect, and felt it to be slightly jarring as it turned into a story about a revolution. It was always a story about revolution, but I could see how the theatricality of the games stole the spotlight for some in the first movies. It premiered on November 21st, 2014, and grossed $755,000 worldwide. We pick up almost immediately where we left off in Part 1, as the gang is trying to assess Peeta as best they can. They send in Prim to try and find out what Peeta knows or remembers. He can't tell what's real or not, but starts frothing at the mouth as he rails against Katniss, warning everyone that she is a monster.
She's a monster! She's a the Capitol created to destroy us!
It's a hard juxtaposition from the Peeta the audience knows. For Katniss, she does her best to ignore Peeta, refusing to accept that this is the caring person she knows, and yet at the same time, she can't deny it. It makes her angry, and her focus has shifted from trying to save and protect Peeta, as she almost sees him as too far gone.
In Katniss's mind, she kind of tries to block out Peeta because she's like, that's not Peeta anymore. That's not something else, that's not him.
Instead, she wants to seek revenge on his behalf. To march to the Capitol and kill Snow for everything he has done to hurt her and the one she loves. Her plans to go rogue have to be put on hold though, as Gale and her are sent on a mission to help with securing District 2. On the way there, we get to see Gale continue to push the envelope with what he is willing to do. He talks about a strategy that involves a two-tiered attack, sending a bomb that damages the enemy but allows them time to think that they are safe, and to send out medics to go and help the wounded. only for that to be when they drop the second bomb. His plan for attacking District 2 also involves bombing the mountains, triggering avalanches that trap the forces and civilians inside. When Katniss and Boggs push back on these ideas, which involve endangering civilian lives, he uses the horrors perpetrated by the Capitol to justify his actions.
We should be given a chance to surrender.
It's a luxury we weren't given when they firebombed 12.
This shows how the cycle of violence continues, as Gale is willing to defeat the enemy by any means necessary, because the other side already used such violence. In his mind, if you are unwilling to do the same as your enemy, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. Why should he care about the lives of civilians when the other side clearly doesn't?
Even if those civilians are just mopping floors, they're helping the enemy. And if they have to die, I can live with that. No one who supports the Capitol is innocent.
For Gale, it's a zero-sum game, and his development really shows how once the cycle has started, it's hard to put an end to the violence and hatred. Coin ultimately gives the order to follow Gale's plan, but to allow a passage for the civilians to escape through. That is where Katniss and the Propo team are waiting. When Katniss sees a District 2 civilian injured, she runs to go and help him, only to find herself being held at gunpoint. The man asks her to give him a reason why he shouldn't just kill her.
Give me one reason I shouldn't shoot you.
I can't.
Her speech to this man reinforces the idea of the cycle of violence, but she also sheds light on how the people who are dying and suffering aren't the people who started these conflicts. The true enemy is the people like Snow, who sit in their ivory tower and watch the districts slowly kill each other. She ends her speech with a call to storm the Capitol.
Turn your weapons to the Capitol.
This isn't an idea loved by all, though, and she ends up getting shot, making one of Snow's goons think that she is dead. This guy's a real dummy, though, as he drinks a glass of wine poured by Snow, like a day after being told about Snow's use of poison. After returning to 13, Katniss is still set on getting her revenge on Snow, and so she boards a hovercraft headed to the front lines in secret. Coin sees Katniss's decision as insubordination. She sees Katniss as a valuable piece to help her win more power.
You're very valuable to us.
But she is equally dangerous. Just like Snow, Coin is starting to think that Katniss has too much influence, and if she were to use that influence against Coin's interests, well, she can't be having that now, can she? And with Katniss going rogue, Coin sees her as someone that's difficult to predict, not the nice puppet that she wants her to be, as she is clearly willing to go against Coin if it's what she believes in. From Coin's perspective, Katniss has outlived her usefulness and would be better off dead. That way, she could live on as a martyr, a symbol that Coin could use whenever she wants, but one that has no agency of its own. That is why she doesn't bring Katniss back from the front lines, and it's also why she assigns her to Squad 451, alongside an old friend. Squad 451 is led by Boggs, and has Katniss, Gale, Finnick, who is quick to abandon his new wife.
Once they're reunited, Finnick then goes off. He's like, now we're married, love, get used to this.
Cressida and her production team, and a bunch of rando soldiers. Peeta is later assigned to the squad, officially to show that he now stands with the rebels, but in reality, he is likely there to kill Katniss. Squad 451's objective is to follow behind the front line fighting, and to film more propos of Katniss capturing the Capitol. Snow has decided to make a spectacle of the rebels, planting something called pods all throughout the Capitol. These pods are death traps, and essentially serve to turn the war into something not too similar from the games.
Welcome to the 76th Hunger Games.
Things take a turn for the worst pretty fast, though, as Boggs is blown up by one of the pods. He is sketched out by Coin, including Peeta, with the squad, and so he essentially transfers command to Katniss with his dying breath. It's a little funny though, as people rush to help Boggs, but just kind of leave the other girl who got blown up to writhe writhe on the floor in pain. When someone eventually goes to help her, they accidentally trigger another pod, causing a thick black oil to spill out everywhere. Things get crazy as Peeta's kill mode is triggered, and he goes for Katniss, only to get one of the red shirts instead. The guy who dies gets flung up by these chain things, and if I'm being honest, I really have no idea what's going on there. Once the oil dissipates, they leave behind the injured girl and her sister before making their escape. Now this next section is kind of weird because the peacekeepers are on the scene pretty quickly, killing the twins. Snow is pretty quick to gloat and announce that they killed Katniss, seeming to genuinely believe it. But my question is, why didn't they have footage of Katniss and crew leaving the building? They have footage of them running in and footage post-oil of the twins being blown up, but no footage of the Katniss crew slowly walking away. Seems like a plot hole to me. In the aftermath of what he has done, Peeta seems to gain some level of self-awareness. He says that earlier when Katniss called him a capital mutt, she was right, as he has no control over his actions.
I murdered one of our squad members. Katniss is right. I'm a mutt. And it's only a matter of time before I snap again.
He says that they should just kill him and be done with it. Gale is quick to take him up on that offer, saying he is all too happy to kill him if it comes to that.
I'll kill you myself.
With everyone thinking they're dead, Pollux suggests that they head underground in order to not reveal themselves. Now, as soon as it was suggested that they go underground, you gotta know that some shit is about to go down. Anytime in a story where they try to find a path underground, you know that not everyone is gonna come back up. The tunnel sequence lives up to expectations, as it is tense from the jump. You are just waiting for things to go bad. You just don't know how. When the zombie mutts pop out and start wreaking havoc, we get a bunch of cool action sequences. Katniss and Gale get cool fight scenes. Cressida is mowing people down with her machine gun. Peeta is actually being useful. The soldiers and camera crew around them start dropping like flies. It all builds up to Finnick's final stand. Finnick gets a really cool fight scene as he holds back the hordes, buying time for the others to escape. Now I will say, he was done a little dirty by the fact that he is forced to use a trident while everyone else gets a machine gun.
All the other guys got machine guns, and I got a trident. I was like, I'm gonna be no use to you from like 100 yards out. I can throw it and it's gone. I'm lost. I'm left with nothing.
But nevertheless, he wields that thing like a badass. Where he is the last one climbing up the ladder, you know something bad is about to happen. Before he can escape, he is pulled down and torn apart by the mutts. In an act of mercy, Katniss drops a bomb on him to put him out of his misery. Man, Finnick deserves so much better. Rip to a legend. However, the rest of the crew aren't out of the woods yet, as they are still on the run, dodging pods as they go. Cressida has a contact where they can find shelter. She brings them to a furry's house, who allows them to hide in the basement. This is where we get our post-tunnel breakdown, as Katniss gets emotional about leading all of their crew to their deaths. Katniss feels the weight of their deaths as they followed her so that she can exact her revenge on Snow. We get a great moment from Peeta as he talks about how, up until this point, Snow controlled everything about their lives. All of the tributes that fought in the Hunger Games and killed each other, they never had a choice, and so Snow took any sense of meaning from their deaths. But Finnick and company, they made a choice to follow Katniss. They didn't do it because they were told they have to. They did it because they believed in her. If Katniss manages to kill Snow, she not only gives purpose to their lives, but the lives of all of the fallen tributes and victims of Snow's killings.
If you end all of this, all those deaths, they mean something.
Snow issues an evacuation for the people of the capital, telling them that they will receive safety and sanctuary if they come to his mansion. Katniss sees this as a great opportunity to sneak in undetected. It's decided that Gale and her will go alone, leaving Peeta, Cressida, and Pollux at the cat lady's house. Worried that he could be taken prisoner again, Peeta asks for a nightlock pill to kill himself, just in case, which Gale is quick to give him. The plan to sneak in amongst the refugees is good in theory, but poorly thought out. Sporting the most recognizable face in Panem, and not accounting for the fact that Snow would have the refugees searched before allowing them in, Katniss and Gale are trapped in a bad spot. Lucky for them, the rebels arrive in the nick of time. All of the capital's children are gathered at the front gates, when some care packages start to be dropped down. Now these are not sponsored good goodies, but bombs. We later learn that this was an order issued by Coin, who used capital ships to blame it on Snow. By doing this, she manages to turn everyone still loyal to Snow against him, as he is seen as bombing his own people. It also satiates her own desire for revenge. In part 1, we learn that Coin lost her husband and daughter because of the capital, so her ordering the deaths of the capital's children feels like her taking from the capital the same thing that was taken from her.
I felt like that was the root of her evolution, that idea that so much had been taken from her family, and her life, that she was like, now we'll take your children.
It speaks to a similar way of thinking that Gale had expressed throughout the Mockingjay films. And speaking of Gale, they use his two-tiered bombing plan here, as after the first bomb, medical personnel are sent to try and help the injured children. Among them is Prim, who had been training as a doctor. When the second bomb hits, Prim is killed, and Katniss is blown back. Once again, the girl on fire. Prim's death is a massive blow to Katniss, as the reason she volunteered for the Hunger Games to begin with, the root of almost every decision she has made, was to protect her sister. And now that her worst fear has come to life, everything she has worked towards feels hollow. When she wakes up, she finds that the capital has been taken, and Snow is their prisoner. She pays him a visit, where she not only learned that he is racist,
Nothing says perfection like white.
but he was not responsible for the bombings. She then sees Gale and feels massively betrayed. All of Gale's decisions have led him here, as even if he isn't directly responsible for Prim's death, she died because of a strategy he agreed with. He feels immense guilt for Prim's death, as he felt it was his responsibility to help protect Katniss's family. Katniss can never look at Gale the same, as he got too caught up in the violence of war.
I think it all kind of goes to his head a little bit, and he loses sight of his own morals and values.
I feel like Gale has one of the more interesting arcs in the series, as he is shaped by the horrors around him until he commits similar horrors of his own. He shows that there are no winners when it comes to war, and that by perpetrating the cycle of violence, you can lose yourself. Coin has named herself interim president for an undisclosed amount of time.
Exactly how long is that interim?
We have no way of knowing for certain.
She claims that there is a lot of anger and bloodlust from the districts, and as a means to satisfy that anger, she suggests holding a symbolic Hunger Games where the capital's children are used. If it wasn't already clear, Coin and Snow are two sides of the same coin. She is willing to do almost anything to ensure her power and to shape Panem in the way that she wants. As she puts it,
there is no sacrifice too great.
She asks the former victors to vote on the idea, with Peeta, Beetee, and Annie all voting no, while Joanna and Sharktooth Lady quickly vote yes. The decision essentially comes down to Katniss and Haymitch. Katniss decides to vote yes, so long as she can be the one to kill Snow. She gives Haymitch a look, and trusting Katniss's judgment, he votes alongside her. Now I think it's fairly obvious that Katniss had no intention of allowing Coin to carry out her new Hunger Games. Her yes vote was simply to give Coin the impression that she is on her side, so that Coin starts to trust her and doesn't suspect what Katniss is really planning. I think Katniss killing Coin was pretty obvious, especially with how it was staged, but it was still well executed and poignant nonetheless. The scene where Haymitch reads a letter to Katniss from Plutarch was originally supposed to be Plutarch in person, but because of Philip Seymour Hoffman's passing, the crew had to improvise. I think this scene further emphasizes Plutarch's role as the Varys of the Hunger Games, serving the higher powers as he secretly works behind the scenes to bring the people the best possible outcome.
Maybe the country was shocked tonight by your arrow, but once again, I was not. You were exactly who I believed you were.
At this point, the plot of the movie has come to an end. Snow's dead, Coin's dead, democracy is on the horizon for Panem. Job done. But I really appreciate that the movie allows us to get closure for Katniss as a character, as her emotional journey is not yet complete. Following her return home, Katniss is left with nothing but her grief. She is left to herself, filled with anger and sadness as she tries to recover from everything that she has gone through. She is alone, until one day, Peeta returns. His first move is to plant flowers by Prim's grave. We get a montage as the two try and move on, finding comfort in each other and being there in any way that they can. It's a slow process, and some wounds never fully heal, but with time, the pain can fade, and they help each other on that journey. It's a really sweet moment when Peeta asks if Katniss loves him, real or not real, a nod to the game they played earlier. Try and help Peeta sort out his real memories from the ones implanted by the Capitol.
You love me. Real or not real?
Real.
We cut to years in the future, where we see Katniss and Peeta with their two children, played by Jennifer Lawrence's real-life nephews. At the beginning of the first movie, Katniss said she would never have kids, but now that the world has changed, she has them with Peeta. I think Peeta is also a big part of her decision to have kids, because if he can still be such a kind-hearted and caring person after everything that he has been through, then maybe it is worth bringing kids into this world. The movie ends with Katniss singing Deep in the Meadow to her child, the same song she sang to Prim at the beginning of the series, in a full circle moment. I think Mockingjay Part 2 was a great conclusion to the series, and even if some of the hype died down by the time of its release, it does a solid job bringing Katniss's journey to a satisfying ending while enforcing the themes of the series. It premiered on November 20th, 2015, and amassed $661,000 at the box office worldwide, the lowest grossing movie of the original series. However, I think that is more to do with Part 1 than the quality of this movie. The Hunger Games truly caught fire, as its dystopian setting played host to a well-written story layered with timeless themes and complex characters. After its success, countless books and movies tried to emulate what made it so special. However, none were ever able to quite reach the same heights. Its strong protagonist helped usher in more female-led stories and movies. The phenomenon that contributed to the Hunger Games' success is not easily reproduced, as it was firing on all cylinders. Its influence can be felt in all aspects of pop culture, from gaming to music. It was innovative not just in its storytelling, but in how it interacted with its fandom, which helped to create an immersive experience. After revisiting these films, I have grown a newfound appreciation for them. They prove themselves to be incredibly rich pieces of media that get better on a rewatch. I guess there isn't much else to say except that these are great movies and have had a profound impact on the cultural zeitgeist. If you somehow made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you for watching. I know it's a long one. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.